Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Kendra and I talk about true crime stories. If you like true crime, I suggest you hit that subscribe button. I'm gonna be reading my notes as I do in all my videos. I don't know, I always apologize. I have to remember this is my YouTube channel. I don't need to copy anybody and do what everyone else does. So I'm gonna be reading my notes just so we could get the case done a little bit faster. Sorry to break it to you guys, no YouTuber ever remembers a case at the top of their head. They're always looking at their notes no matter what you think. Some have even perfected it to where they're looking around and kind of glance, but that's not me. I'm gonna read my notes and just get the story to you guys. That's all that matters. Sorry if you guys hear cars driving by. I do live on a main street, so there's no avoiding it. So today we're gonna be talking about the case of Sarah and Amina Said. They were murdered by their father, Yassein Said, in 2008. Amina and Sarah's father, Yassein Said, was Egyptian and he was born in Sinai, Egypt in 1957. He then came to the United States on a student visa in 1983. Yaser was the oldest of 5 siblings. When Yaser was 30 years old, he and his siblings worked at a small convenience store where his brother Yassein met a 14-year-old girl named Patricia Owens who went by the nickname Tissy. Patricia and Yassein were only together for a short period of time before they asked Patricia's father for permission to get married. The marriage eventually didn't end up happening. They broke up a short time before getting married, but then a few months after their breakup, Patricia, now 15 years old, her and Yaser began to date and start a relationship. He was 14 years her senior. Patricia then asked her father again for permission to get married to Yaser. At first, Patricia's father was saying no, he absolutely was not okay with this, but then Yaser told him that he would take care of her financially and that she would be okay. They eventually get his blessing and they marry in 1987. Immediately after getting married, they apply for Yaser's green card to stay in the United States. In the beginning of their marriage, Yaser was very affectionate, loving, caring towards Patricia, but then 6-7 months after getting married, Yaser started to become controlling and started to isolate her from her family and even had told her that he made a mistake marrying an American woman. She also remembers Yaser having 6 affairs that she knew of. But despite how their relationship was doing, she was 16 years old, she, kind of grew dependent on him, and she became pregnant with their first child in 1988, which they named him Islam. Followed by their second child, Amina Said, born on March 2nd, 1989. And finally, their third child, Sarah Said, born almost exactly a year after Amina, to the day on March 16th, 1990. All 3 of their children were born in Dallas, Texas. The 3 siblings were all only a year apart, so they grew to be very close, Islam growing up to be a mama's boy and both girls being a daddy's girl. Amina Said was known to be full of life, very outgoing, talkative, while Sarah was more of the quiet one. But they weren't just siblings, they were best friends. They shared a room together, even shared the same bed growing up, and they were considered to be always together. Families say that the girls had manners, as Islam did not. Islam wasn't a sweet kid. He was very socially awkward, but he obeyed every word that his father said, and for that, Yaser treated Islam a little bit different than the girls. When Amina was 9 years old in 1998, she told her maternal grandmother that her father had been touching her and Sarah inappropriately. The grandmother then told Patricia, and Patricia called CPS, then took the girls to the Cook's Children's Hospital to be examined for sexual assault. I'm not going to go into direct detail as to what Amina and Sarah accused their father of doing. All that information is available online for the public to read. It's just too much detail for what I want my channel to consist of. But Amina had said that her father had been doing this for 1 to 2 years. The assault started when Patricia was out of town taking care of her mother and while the girls were in the care of their father. Each time that the assaults happened, each girl was alone with their father. He didn't do this to them at the same time. I'm not sure how many times the assaults actually happened to Amina, but Sarah remembered her father sexually assaulting her at least 2 times. After both girls were examined, the report states that there was no evidence of sexual assault, but does not rule out sexual abuse. Patricia made a police report while at the hospital, and she began to stay with the girls at her mother's house way far away from Yaser. Yaser started calling her constantly and started driving by her mother's house all hours of the day and night. He would call her telling her he didn't do that to his daughters, and then he would threaten her and her family. Yaser was eventually arrested for retaliation and was bonded out by his brother, who paid $500 for bail. Soon after his release, the girls retracted their statements and said that they had lied about it, that their father didn't really abuse them, and they just wanted to live with their grandmother at the time. So they told police that they just made it all up. While making their new statement, Amina and Sarah pleaded with police to not let them go back to their home with their father. While making their new statement, Amina and Sarah pleaded with police to not let them go back to their home where their father was, saying they just didn't want to go back there, but because they changed their story and said that they lied, Yaser was never arrested and charges were dropped against him. So then the girls had to move back in with their father. This is all accusations though, so there's no physical proof that Yaser ever sexually assaulted Amina and Sarah, but Patricia in a documentary backs up these accusations by saying after her first child, Islam, was born, her little sister would come over and help with him, babysit, and one day she went home crying, locked herself in the bathroom, and wouldn't talk to anyone. Her mom kept banging on the door asking what had happened, and eventually she told her that Yaser messed with her in a sexual way. After finding this out, they decided not to go to police or to share this with Patricia's father. Their reason was because they wanted to deal with it within the family and not with police. Now, that reason is beyond me. I'm not sure why they didn't go to police, but okay. Patricia then says that she had no idea he would eventually do this to his own children. In a documentary that I saw about this case, it shows Yaser always having a home video camera. He's always recording the girls, making comments saying like, oh, nice legs, oh, nice eyes, calling them beautiful, which seems pretty normal for a dad to do. I mean, being proud of how beautiful they are, that's normal, right? So, but some of these home videos were kind of creepy. Like, he would show Sarah and Amina and zoom in on their butts and say that's nice. It's just kind of weird. Even in one video that I saw in the documentary, it shows Sarah and Amina sleeping in their bed, and Yaser comes in with Islam and he's recording them. He then tells Islam to remove the blanket from Sarah's legs, and that's when he zooms in on her butt and says, ooh, that's nice. Even though she was fully clothed, it was still weird. Yaser would even show up at Sarah's job while she was working at a convenience store. He would be recording her while he was parked in his vehicle outside. She wasn't able to see outside, so she didn't know this was even happening. But he would get upset at her smiling at customers and say that she's just being too friendly. In one of the documentaries that I watched, Amina's in the car with him while he's recording her one time, and in the background of this particular video, you can hear Amina tell her dad she's just doing her job. When Amina was 16 years old, Yaser took her to Egypt to find her a husband. Yaser had a friend in mind who was in his 30s. They were Muslim, so when Amina would turn 18, she would have to be married off to this man, which is what's known as a pre-arranged marriage. It's very popular in the Muslim communities. Parents of a Muslim child would have pre-arranged marriages set up by their parents for a person of their choice, particularly somebody who was financially stable, kind of like a dowry. The highest bidder gets the child. Soon after arriving back to the US from Egypt, Sarah, Amina, and Islam enrolled into taking Taekwondo lessons. At this Taekwondo class, Amina meets a boy named Joseph Marino, who she called Jojo. They began to flirt and show interest towards each other, and eventually their friendship turned into a full-blown love romance. They were head over heels for each other. They were so dramatically in love, planning their future together, and Amina even started to share her secrets with Jojo. Every aspect of her life, Jojo knew. All the abuse, the control, the pre-arranged marriage, just everything. They began to exchange love notes every time they saw each other at their Taekwondo class until she grew too anxious about Yaser possibly finding out about them. She was terrified of Yaser finding out about Jojo. So Jojo ends up getting her a cell phone so they could talk a little bit more and not just in class. But Yaser one day found a love note that Amina wrote to Jojo. He questioned her about this letter and she said she wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend, so in a perfect world it was a letter to her imaginary boyfriend. Yaser, of course, didn't believe her, so within 2 days, Yaser moves Amina and his family to Bedford, Texas, which is 30 miles away from where they currently lived. Jojo and Amina then lost contact. But after a few months, Amina reaches out via email to her Taekwondo instructor, telling him what had happened and why she hadn't been to her class. In the email, she also asked him to pass a message on to JoJo, and the instructor reached out to JoJo's father, who then reached out to JoJo's mother. That's when Ruth Thraughter, JoJo's mother, gets involved. Ruth doesn't tell JoJo that Amina was trying to reach him because Amina had told her that Yaser was out to get JoJo, that if he knew anything about him, that he would kill him. Amina swore that she had not told her father anything about JoJo, didn't even tell him his name. So Ruth and Amina kept corresponding through emails without JoJo knowing. Amina shares that her father woke her up one day by kicking her in the face and how she had braces, that you couldn't tell her braces from her lip. She said that her mom wouldn't even take her to the hospital. In an interview later, Patricia claims that Amina never even had braces, that was a lie. She also said that she did take Amina to the hospital, but on the way, Yaser's brother called, threatening her, saying that if she were to go to the hospital, Yaser would go to jail. Of course, Patricia turns back home without getting Amina any medical attention. Amina also in this email tells Ruth that one night she heard her uncle and dad whispering in another room. She claimed that she heard her dad say, "Soon Amina will just be a memory." Soon after this, Amina posted a meme on her MySpace page with one of the quotes saying, "I don't want to just be a memory." One day, Ruth gets another email from Amina saying that her father took her back to Egypt and how she was so scared because he took her passport from her. She gave Ruth all of her personal information, including her social security number. She wanted to make sure that Ruth had all of this information in case she never heard from Amina again. A few weeks later, she then gets another email from Amina letting her know that she's returned back to the States, and she started begging for Ruth to let her talk to JoJo. She felt something was going to happen to her, so she said that she wanted to be able to talk to him again. Ruth finally tells JoJo about the emails between her and Amina, and then JoJo and Amina start corresponding back and forth via email as well. He said after all this time, it was like she had never left him. The feelings were all still there, and he still was in love with her. Amina told JoJo that she was so unhappy that she even tried to commit suicide. She was taken to the hospital, went through counseling, and went right back to the life she referred to as suffering. After a few months of talking again, they set up a plan to erase each other for the next 6 months, so they could run away with each other, and when they did, Yaser wouldn't go look for JoJo first. They became engaged. JoJo gave her a ring and proposed. They planned to run away and get married in Las Vegas and just begin their lives together. JoJo dropped out of school, so he was able to start working and earn income, so when the time came that he and Amina would run away, he would be prepared. Christmas 2007, Amina, 18, and Sarah is now 17, had enough of Yaser. Sarah now had a boyfriend as well, so her and Amina decide to leave their home and get away from Yaser. Patricia was having problems with Yaser as well, so Amina suggested that Patricia go with them. Patricia agreed, and they fled to Kansas, where Patricia's sister lived. Patricia told her sister and other family members that Yaser was abusive to her and the girls, said he was going to kill Amina for dating an American boy if she ever went back. But of course, in an interview with Patricia, she later denies ever even saying this. The same night after arriving at Patricia's sister's house in Kansas, Patricia tells her sister Jill that they need some salsa and chips for their Mexican dinner that they're eating. So her and the girls go to the store real quick, and when they come back, Patricia told her that they needed to leave and that they weren't safe there. Patricia and the girls end up staying at a hotel for a few days until they find an apartment at the Silver Creek Apartments. They originally got rid of their phones that they had a phone plan with, and they got burner phones. Burner phone is just a phone that you can buy at a local store where you don't have a contract or you don't have to put your information in. It's just kind of like a use the phone and throw it away whenever you want. They bought these phones so they weren't able to be tracked. But Patricia still had access to her old phone's voicemail system. When she would check her voicemail, she would hear messages from Yaser and Islam. Islam would tell her how much he missed her and the girls and begged her to come back. Patricia would start to feel guilty for leaving Islam, and Amina would express her concerns about this to JoJo, saying she was worried that her mom was going to go back to Yaser. Patricia one day agrees to talk to Yaser's brother via phone, and the brother told her if they didn't want Yaser to be in the home, that he and his brothers would make Yaser leave. Patricia then believes him and starts to plan her trip back home on December 30th. Patricia didn't tell the girls though. She told Amina and Sarah that she just wanted to go back to the city for New Year's to put flowers on her mother's graveside because it was her mother's birthday. She promised that they would go and stay at her sister's house and not go to where Yaser was. She promised they would come right back to their apartment right after New Year's Eve. So Amina and Sarah agree to go back with her, but once they hit Texas, Patricia tells them she is in fact going back home to Yaser. Amina gets so angry and nervous, telling her, no, I'm not going back, he's going to kill me. So Sarah decides to go back home with her mom while Amina ends up going to a friend's house. Amina at this time is thinking, after her mom talks to Yaser, that they will be going back to their apartment in Tulsa, but Patricia is not planning to go back to their apartment. December 31st, New Year's Eve, Amina called her Aunt Connie upset, telling her that Patricia was going back to Yaser and that she didn't know what to do. Connie told her to get a restraining order against her father and to go as far away as possible and never turn back. Amina then said okay and hung up. The whole time that they were in Tulsa, away from Yaser, Amina and Jojo were in constant contact. She then texts Jojo saying, it's time for you and I to be together forever. On the morning of January 1st, 2008, now with New Year's being over, Patricia begins to call and text Amina all day starting right at 8 in the morning. She's begging Amina to come home and even has Sarah texting her, telling her to come home as well. With Patricia not having any luck getting Amina to come home, Patricia pops up at the friend's house and demands Amina to come home. Amina tells her no over and over again, but Patricia doesn't leave without Amina. She's standing in the doorway, not leaving without her daughter. Amina finally agrees to go home with Patricia, saying, fine, I'll go home, I'll get my school books, but I'm not staying. Amina and Patricia pull up in the driveway where Yaser is outside waiting to greet her. He then kisses Amina and Sarah on the forehead and convinces them to go to dinner with him, just so they can talk and discuss everything that had happened. Patricia then tells Yaser that she wants to go along, but Yaser says no. The girls agree and they go with their father in his yellow taxi cab. Around 7 p.m. that same night, Irving, Texas Police Department get a 911 call made by Sarah. Here's the clip from the actual 911 call, and just to let you know, it's very sad and disturbing.
What is your emergency? What's going on, ma'am?
I'm dying, that's what's up.
Okay, let me transfer you. I'm gonna get fire department on that. Okay, hold on 1 sec. Okay. What?
Oh my God!
Irving Fire Department. Irving Fire Department.
Ma'am, are you still there?
That's just so sad. I couldn't even imagine. The dispatcher in this case did not do a good job in this situation. I'm sure we can all agree. Putting her on hold and not sitting on the phone asking as many questions as they could is just not protocol for how to deal with emergency situations like this. There was 2 phone calls to 911 made by Sarah that night. One phone call was 4 minutes and 38 seconds long, and the other one was 1 minute and 51 seconds long. The police could not figure out the location where the 911 call was coming from. They tracked the owner of the cell phone that Sarah was using to find out who it was calling 911. After tracking whose phone it was, it led them to pop up at Patricia's home to see if there was any information she can give, if she knew anything, and to let her know what was going on. Patricia quickly tells them to call the yellow cab company and get the GPS location of the taxi. But for privacy reasons, the company did not give out the GPS location right away and told them that it would take some time. Patricia heads to the police department to be questioned by police. After Sarah was deceased, the police line still was open and recording for 42 minutes. The police knew the proximity of where the call was coming from, but not the exact location. So police and emergency personnel used sirens to try to find the location. The dispatcher would be on the phone while emergency personnel would blare their sirens. This would let the dispatcher be able to let the emergency personnel know if she can hear the sirens through the phone and if they were getting any closer. But around 8:30 p.m., a taxi driver calls 911 letting them know he had found a yellow taxi cab in the entrance of the Omni Mandalay Hotel. The caller tells the dispatcher that he sees a yellow cab with 2 people inside, one in the passenger seat who appears to be hunched over with blood coming out of her ear. The second person is in the back seat, and he believes both people are deceased. Police then find the location due to the man being on the 911 call. They find the bodies of Amina and Sarah shot several times in the taxi cab. At the police station, Patricia tells investigators the story of them running away and how she came back because she felt guilty. At Jojo's home, Jojo's sleeping and he is awakened by his mother crying while trying to wake him up. Ruth tells him that Yaser had shot and killed Amina and Sarah and how it was all over the news. Jojo lost it. He even punched a hole in the wood part of his headboard. He eventually was so lost after Amina's murder that he ended up in the hospital for losing his grip on reality and having severe depression. Autopsies showed that Amina had been shot several times but had died instantly. Sarah was shot several times and died of a slow, agonizing death. Within the days after the girls were murdered, family and friends stood on corners walking around trying to pass flyers out with Yaser's photos, trying to spread awareness for his capture. But Patricia had a huge problem with this and she was very upset. She had even gone to the police department asking if there was anything that they could do to make her family and friends stop sharing his photos. But police said that they had every right to do this and there was nothing that they could do. The police let Patricia go into the home to collect some of her belongings while they were chaperoning her. Family and friends say that she took the family computer, a box of important paperwork containing Yaser's birth certificate, and a passport. Patricia also took family photos from the home and videotapes from their video camera. Patricia's family and friends say they don't trust her and they blame her for the girls' murders. Her own sister Jill started a petition to have Patricia arrested. She believes she played a huge role in their murders and is just shocked that Patricia would allow Yaser to take the girls on his own. They also believe that Yaser's family is involved as well. They say it had to have been planned. There's no way that this was just spur of the moment. They said that Yaser left the cab after the shooting. Did he arrange for a ride and be picked up by someone? Did he have another car nearby? There's no way that no one would have seen him after this crime was committed and him not have blood on him and someone see him. Patricia goes back and forth when it comes to Yaser. I mean, first she says that he's abusive, then she says that he was sweet, he was a great father, then he was a bad father, how he would force her to take pictures with guns, but then retracts that and says that they took photos with the guns jokingly. Then in one interview she says she's Muslim, then a year later she says that she's a Christian. So I just think that Patricia's a hot mess. Like, I feel like she's not an independent woman and maybe grew dependent on Yaser, so she kind of flip-flopped. Patricia was asked to take a polygraph test, but she denied, and when she was asked if she was in contact with Yaser, she again denied, but phone records show she spoke to him the same night of the murders at 9:06 p.m. for 2 minutes right after he had shot Amina and Sarah. But that wasn't the only time. Phone records also show that she had been in contact with Yaser days after the murders. What could they have talked about for 2 minutes on that phone call? Did he tell her what he did, why he did it, that they were gone? I'm so curious on what happened during that phone call, but she doesn't admit it, so there's no finding out. Also on Yaser's phone records, it shows that Yaser and his brother Yassein, the brother that Patricia dated before him, had spoken many times throughout the prior week before the murders occurred. This would be around the time that they had ran away and were in Tulsa. They spoke so much that records show they spoke for a total of 861 minutes during that entire week before they were murdered. That's multiple phone calls a day though, not at one single time. Also, 3.5 hours after Sarah's call to 911, he spoke to him for 12 minutes. Patricia says that Yassein was Yaser's closest brother and she believes he's the one that helped him escape. Police uncover a few things about Yaser's family. Patricia told them that before moving to the US, Yaser had gotten upset at a coworker and he had waited outside for the man to come out of his workplace, and he then proceeded to run him over. The coworker ended up passing away but Yaser was never charged for anything. She says that Yaser's family, particularly his father, paid a lot of money to get him off the hook for that crime, and that's when he came to the US. Police look into Yaser's sister's background and find out she's on the FBI's most wanted list for kidnapping her own children. The husband had custody and she had the children at the time, was due to return the children to the husband after gathering some of the children's belongings, but then fled. Patricia claims Yassein took his sister, nephew, and niece to Canada, where she allegedly stayed for a year before ending up back in Egypt with her 2 children. Patricia claims she specifically saw both children when she went to Egypt with Yaser at least one time. While police are investigating why Yaser would do this to his own daughters, they came up with the conclusion that this was possibly an honor killing. An honor killing is a murder of an individual. Usually it's a female murdered by a male relative due to the belief that the victim has brought dishonor or shame amongst the family name or reputation. The shame that they feel from the woman's behavior causing them to kill her to restore the honor. Now, if the person, the relative who's doing the murder, doesn't go along with the honor killing, they will be shunned. The person will have to walk in shame with their head down through the streets and would not get any respect from anyone any further. They would be cut off from being able to work and earn an income for their household. If the relative does go through with the murder, they are in some way praised for it, well respected, and has the full support of the family and the whole community. How many honor killings actually take place in the world is statistically unknown due to them not being reported. Honor killings are more known in the Middle East, the immigrant communities, Indian subcontinent, and in North Africa. The reason is for the man to be in control and to reinforce the system of male power and privilege. How many honor killings actually take place in the world is statistically unknown due to the murders not being reported. According to the women's advocacy groups, they believe over 20,000 honor killings happen worldwide every year, and over 800 million girls living in honor killing zones right now. Some people don't agree that this was an honor killing because Yaser wasn't known to be religious. He wasn't known to pray or even practice Muslim traditions. The only thing that can link him to anything following the Muslim tradition is that he didn't want his daughters to marry American men. Amina and Sarah's funeral was held as a Christian and Muslim service, which caused a division in the family, of course. Yaser's family and Patricia's family all joined. It was an open casket for both girls. They were both in brown wooden caskets, aligned inside with light pink satin. They both wore 2-piece satin pajama sets with pink roses in their hair. Jojo and Ruth, of course, attended their funeral to show their love and respect. They sat in the second row from the front row directly behind Islam. Islam turned around for a few seconds for whatever reason, then did a double take at Jojo, as if he recognized him. Islam then asked him, "Aren't you Joseph?" And Jojo responded with yes. Instantly, he knew it was about to be a problem and that they were possibly going to start fighting. Islam stood up very angry and told Jojo to get the F out of here right now. You don't belong here, and was yelling, "You did this." Jojo said that they were about to fight when 4 men came up and they grabbed Jojo. He later found out that it was 4 police officers. They began to ask him if he knew anything about Amina and Sarah's murder, if he was involved, but then they soon let him go. But then they ended up letting him go and told him to leave by request by the family. Sarah and Amina were buried in a Muslim cemetery in Crum, Texas by Patricia's request. The day after the funeral, Patricia and Islam move into Yaser's brother Mohsen's home with his wife and kids. Patricia says that everything seemed to be going great at first when she first moved in, but then Mohsen started making comments like Yaser didn't want to raise whores for daughters, and another brother of Yaser told Patricia that she's lucky that Yaser even left the girls' bodies so they could be found, because if it were his kids, they wouldn't have been found. Also staying at Mohsen's, Patricia learned from Mohsen's wife that Yaser called Mohsen the night of the murders and told him to meet him at a Denny's, aka their spot. But Mohsen's wife said that her husband didn't actually end up going. Years later in 2014, a documentary called Prince with Honor tried reaching out to Mohsen by going to his home. Mohsen's daughter was the only one home at the time and said that they don't want to talk and they want to remain quiet. Soon after leaving the home, the producer gets a phone call from Mohsen's wife. Her name is Mabel. She's yelling and screaming, asking them, "Why did you come to my house and why did you harass my daughter?" Calling the producer a fag, a whore, a bitch, a cunt, and many more names, while ending the phone call with, "I have contacts that will find you and will kill you." Patricia decided to move out of Mawson's home and move into one of her family members' houses, leaving Islam with Mawson. Islam stopped talking to Patricia in 2008 due to him blaming her for what happened to his sisters. He believes her running away with them is what led Yaser to actually kill them. During interviews with Islam, he would tell reporters that his father should turn himself in, but then he would say he probably is dead. A friend of Amina said that Islam one day would switch and say that his father didn't do it, and then he would say that the girls deserved what happened to them. He was just kind of all over the place. He didn't know if he wanted to be on his sister's side or if he wanted to be on his dad's side. Islam eventually moved to Egypt for 3 years, and while in Egypt, Patricia's sister posted something on social media sharing Amina and Sarah's story, saying how she believed it was an honor killing. Islam had saw this and completely freaked out. I mean, he became irate. He called his aunt screaming and cussing, even was threatening her life, and to not talk about his sisters ever again. He even started posting things like, "Death to America, my enemy ugly land, we will kill you, Muslim brothers and sisters, we need to attack America for making Muslims look bad in America." He ended up sometime moving back to the United States, but I'm not sure how, if this was all over the news, why they would even allow him to come back after writing such things. I mean, maybe authorities didn't know about the threatening post, but they were on the news, so I'm not really sure. This is a full, like, high criminal case, so I'm not sure how they wouldn't have known about that. But 2009, Patricia filed for divorce and was no longer married to Yaser and went back to her maiden name Owens. People believe that Yaser fled back to Egypt, but Patricia's side of the family believed he was still in the States. They believed he actually still lived in Texas because Yaser had said to multiple people on multiple occasions that he loved the States too much that he'd never return to Egypt. December 4th, 2014, Yassein Said was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list with a $100,000 reward for any information leading to his capture. Police had tips from many people all over the world, the United States, especially sightings in New York and New Jersey areas, but when following up, they had nothing. August 14, 2017, a maintenance worker at an apartment complex in Bedford, Texas, where Islam rented an apartment, reported seeing a man that resembled Yassein Said. The man said he saw the man inside of Islam's apartment. 6:30 p.m. that same evening, an agent went to interview Islam and he was very upset and refused to cooperate. He then called someone around 1 a.m. saying, "We have a problem." A search warrant was executed on the apartment, which it was empty at the time. When they went inside to search, police noticed broken branches below the patio, suggesting that someone jumped off the patio and landed on the bush. Next to the bush, they found a pair of eyeglasses. Inside the apartment, they collected a Pall Mall cigarette butt from the trash can and a toothbrush from inside of a luggage located inside of a closet. All of this was collected and submitted into evidence to be compared to DNA of Amina and Sarah Said. Soon after, it was told by a witness that Yassein and another man went into the apartment leasing office and demanded to know who saw someone in Islam's apartment. The DNA came back a few months later, determining it was most likely from Sarah and Amina's biological father, Yaser Said. August 10th, 2020, authorities became aware of 2 homes in the name of Dolly Said, which was one of Yassein's daughters. One of the homes that were in her name was located in Euless, Texas, where Islam was known to be a resident, and the other home was located in Justin, Texas. Police began surveillance on both of the homes. FBI saw Islam and Yassein carrying out 5 grocery bags from his vehicle and bringing them into the Justin home. A few days later, they saw him arrive with more bags. About 8:50 p.m., Islam was seen exiting with 2 bags, possibly now containing trash. He placed the bags in his vehicle, and he and Yassein drove to South Lake Shopping Center, which was about 20 miles away from where they were staying, to dispose of the bags in a public trash can. Bags were, of course, seized by FBI agents. Police observed Yassein and Islam on different occasions entering and exiting the home, but one time after Islam and Yassein both had left, they had saw another man inside the home, like a shadow, and couldn't tell exactly who it was, but they knew that another person was in the home. After weeks of watching the home, FBI obtained a search warrant and arrested Yaser without incident on August 26, 2020. Same day, Islam and Yassein were both arrested and charged with concealing a person from arrest. Now, following up with the case in 2021, yes, this guy is finally freaking captured. Like, after all of these years, after 12 years, he is now caught. I'm just ecstatic. So, Islam on January 9th, 2021 pled guilty to harboring a fugitive, conspiracy to harbor a fugitive, and one count of conspiracy to obstruct justice. April 27, 2021, he was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. Yassein claimed he hated Yaser and what he did to the girls, and if he had known what happened, he wouldn't have helped him. Okay. February 4th, he was found guilty of conspiracy and harboring a fugitive. He could face up to 30 years in prison. But today is June 1st, 2021, and Yessein sentencing is in a few days in Fort Worth, Texas, June 4th. I will update you guys in my description with any information that I get, so if you're interested to know about that, then go ahead and check back. Yassein Said is facing a capital murder trial, making him eligible for the death penalty in the state of Texas. He is currently awaiting trial. Ruth is Amina's strongest advocate still to this day. She actually had released a statement after finding out about Yaser's capture. She said, quote, "Throughout the night, I was very emotional," end quote. She also posted on social media that her son Joseph is doing very well. He just doesn't have social media. Patricia seemed to have a few things to say after finding out about Yaser's arrest. She said, quote, "It was the happiest moment. He is caught and justice can be served for Amina and Sarah." She goes on to say she thinks her own son, Islam and Yassein, should go to prison for the rest of their lives, end quote. Patricia's sister Connie says, quote, "I don't know how someone can protect a man who shot and killed your sisters and has no regard for the law or for the lives that are lost. It's disgusting to me," end quote. I remember when I was a little girl and this story came out in 2008, it hit me hard because I was the same age as Amina. I was born the same year as her, and just the thought of your own father murdering you and your sister is just so sad, and it stuck with me for so many years. Periodically, I would go on the website just to check if he was captured yet, which every time I checked, he was never captured. And then I was telling my husband about this story a few weeks ago, and I decided to randomly look after a few years, and it said he was captured. And I was so excited. I was like, "Did you hear about this story before?" And I just like told him the whole thing, and I was like, "I have to do a story on it." I'm sorry, my daughter's talking right now. So I am just so glad that he's been captured and justice can finally be served. That is all that I have on the case of Sarah and Amina Said. If you guys like this video, and again, if it was easy to follow along, hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you guys haven't already. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.